The next mention we have of the Midianites, Joseph was sold by his brothers into a caravan of Midianites. And then we find that Moses marries a Midianite. Moses' father-in-law was named Jethro, and he was actually a Midianite priest. And as we look at that story, we can actually come to the conclusion that even though things were not ideal, some good came out of it. And that should be good news for us. And then the next mention that we have is that the Midianites oppressed Israel. The Midianites went together with the Amalekites and others, and they made it nasty for the Israelites. And then the Israelites cried out for help, and God sent them help, and God sent Gideon to defeat the Midianites. This is an example of genocide because the Midianites were exterminated. Now, here's what the Bible says about that. The Midianites were so cruel that many Israelites ran to the mountains and hid in caves. See, the Taliban weren't the first people to do this. But the Israelites, when they heard the Midianites were coming, they ran to the mountains. They hid in caves. And every time the Israelites would plant crops, the Midianites invaded Israel. So Israel was trying to make a living. They're trying to exist. So, back in those days, it was an agricultural society. So they would plant crops, and then the Midianites would come in, and they would steal the crops. And not only that, after they had taken most of them, they would devastate the crops by setting them on fire or giving them the rest of the crops to their animals. This is Judges chapter 6, verses 2 to 3. Here's what the Bible says about these Midianites. They rode in on their camels, they set up their tents, and then let their livestock eat the crops. The Midianites stole food, sheep, cattle, and donkeys. And like a swarm of locusts, they could not be counted, and they ruined the land. So the Midianites came in droves, hundreds of thousands. They came in, it says, like locusts, and they devastated the land of the Israelites. And the Bible even goes on to say that the Israelites, many of them, starved to death because of the evil deeds of the Midianites. And so the Israelites cried out to the Lord. And they said, "Oh Lord, please make this stop." Now this whole chapter is prefaced by verse 1. And in verse 1 it says, because the Israelites did evil to the Lord, that God allowed the Midianites to oppress them for 7 years. But now the 7 years are up, and the people were about to die off because of the Midianite attacks on them. So what happened is, the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, and he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon didn't think he was a mighty warrior. He didn't understand why the angel would say that about him. And Gideon replied, "Sir, if the Lord is with us, why has all of this happened to us?" Maybe you've asked yourself that question. If the Lord is with me, why am I suffering these financial setbacks or these health setbacks? Or why is, my marriage on the rocks, or my marriage dissolving? Or, you can go on and on and on. If the Lord is with me, then why is all this happening? And Gideon said to the angel, "And where are all the miracles that our ancestors told us about?" Maybe you too have prayed for miracles and you haven't seen the miracle that you're looking for. That would be just like what happened to Gideon. And Gideon said to the angel, "In fact, didn't our ancestors say the Lord brought us up out of Egypt, but now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites?" See, their experience was similar to yours in a sense, that sometimes we question God. In fact, if you didn't have the ability to question God, you wouldn't need faith. Everything would be, just in black and white. But the fact is that wherever there's faith, there also has to be correspondingly questions. And so they're questioning. Gideon here is questioning. Well, if God is with us and He has this power to perform all these miracles, then why hasn't God done this? But the angel named him the mighty warrior. In Hebrew, it's Hayel Gilboa. Hayel means mighty, and Gilboa means hero warrior. Now, the title in red on the screen is what Jesus is called in Isaiah 9:6. He is called El Gibora, mighty God. But Gideon here is called mighty warrior, Hayel Gilboa. And what we see here is that in 9:6, where our text is taken from, his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. In 9:6, it says that Jesus would be called, or the baby, the child, the Messiah would be called Mighty God. But in verse 4, it says, as it was in the days of Midian. So there's absolutely no question that when this baby is born, some special things are going to happen. He's called the Mighty God, just as Gideon was called the Mighty Warrior. And that's important as we look at this. Now, talk about odds of winning the lottery. Gideon went to war with 300 men, and he carried with him, each of the men carried a pitcher, a sword, and a torch. And he went to war against the Midianites who were oppressing Israel under the direction of God. And you know the story about how they started out with more men, more soldiers than 300, but God eventually got the army down to 300 and went against the Midianites. These 300 Israelites went against the Midianites. Now, the Bible does not tell us how many Midianites there were. But we are told that it was like a swarm of locusts. And the archaeologists and the Bible scholars who have studied this said it had to be at least 300,000, if not many, many more. So you have 300 men versus 300,000 men. And guess who wins? The 300 win, because God is on their side. They break the pitchers that they had, and they attacked at night, and there was confusion. They sounded the trumpets. The 300,000 men were scared, and they turned upon each other. They killed each other. They ran off, and the Israelites chased them. And that night, the Midianites were totally wiped out, never to be heard of again. Genocide. Gone. They were evil, and God's vengeance came down upon them. The 300 Israelites with God were more powerful than the entire Midianite army.